Hey folks, Tuesday, I'm back with you again. Thanks for joining me. Today I want to put a video together. I was demonstrating and outlining a bit of a process I've been playing around with, creating trance gates, effectively using several different ideas and combining them to make really sort of compelling presets and trance gate effects. So I'm using Bitwig Studio, obviously. But you can do this in, you can probably do this in most hosts, I'd imagine, using a bit of trickery that would be probably best described as kind of, I don't know, each host has probably got its own method of doing this sort of thing, because what I'm doing with this this idea and technique is employing multi-band processing. So depending on your host, there's probably different ways of going about that. In Bitwig Studio, we've got several different ways you can do it in Bitwig, but the way I've gone about it is using the chain device for starters, because I want to set up a effects chain. But within that chain, I've got this effects layer device, which allows me to layer several different chains within the chain. So, if that makes sense, there is the actual multi-band effects. Where are they? Multi-band effects 2 and 3. There are those devices, but I wanted to employ more than 3 bands in this case, so that's why I've opted for the effects layer approach, which allows us to overcome the limitations that these 2 multi-band effects have. So with those, the effects 2 is just a 2-band split, and multi-band effects 3 is a 3-band split. But in this case, I wanted more than 3 bands, so I've used the effects layer, and then within each layer, I've employed an EQ to basically split the bands up into their respective EQ bands. So I'll just collapse that for now. I'll demonstrate the sound. I'm using the Synclavier V plugin at the moment. It's just a pad preset, which sounds quite nice, but this effectively works really well with different pad type presets, or soundscapes and so on, that are best suited for trance and ambient, and you could probably employ it with other genres and techno and so on, but it tends to work very well with pads, and I'll just demonstrate the sound. So I'm using this preset to demonstrate this sort of technique and overall preset, because it has a nice sort of rising, evolving sound with a lot of the higher frequency elements slowly coming in, so that means you sort of hear the effect of the different bands as the sound comes in and evolves. So it's quite nice sounding. But what really makes this sort of interesting, I find, is that I'm incorporating the Euclidean algorithm on each band, and effectively different you know, different sort of step patterns and that of that algorithm to create interesting sort of interweaving rhythms, and just sort of each band has its own separate pattern, but they play well together, you know, rhythmically. And I guess I'll just go from scratch, just build it up from scratch so you can get an idea of how to put it together yourself. There's probably other plugins I could recommend a few other multi-band plugins, probably notably Multipass from Kilohertz is really, really good for exploring this idea as well, because it's just got a nice sort of streamlined interface that works really well. It's worth checking out because I think they've got a pretty good deal going on at the moment. So I won't go into that, but I'm sure there's probably other multi-band approaches you could effectively recreate this idea with. I'm going to stick with Bitwig's kind of native devices in this case, apart from this synclavier obviously, but we're going to start with the chain device, which is, yeah, I've got to learn my alphabet. It's chain. Okay, so we're going to open the chain up. Well, we can slot things in here. We're going to drop the effects layer device inside the chain. Okay, so now this allows us to set up each of the bands that we're going to use for multi-band processing. So to do that, I'm just going to drag EQ2 into that, and we're going to duplicate that a number of times, 4 times effectively. And this is going to correspond to each band. So to do that, we're going to set these EQs up into their specific band. So take the high band and we'll low pass that with a 4-pole. It's somewhere around 100 hertz. I'd imagine it's probably a good starting point for the low frequency band, like the real subs and the real sort of low frequencies. The second band, we're going to take the low band here in this EQ2, and we're going to turn this into high pass 4-pole, and we're going to sort of leave that around 109 hertz there as well. So that's got the crossover there that's quite close with the first band, which is at 109 hertz also. So the high band we're going to change into low pass 4-pole. We're going to split that down to around somewhere around 400. So we've got the low mids there. It's 415 hertz. So there's our low mid band. And this third band here, we're going to take this and then set that as a high pass again and bring that back up to about the same 400. Thereabouts, 415. And the high band, we're going to low pass that and bring that back down to say around maybe around 1500 or 1.5k. So that can be our upper mid band, and then finally this fourth band will be our high frequency band, which will set the low band to about 1.5k again, and we'll just leave the high band open there. You can probably turn that into a high sharp if you want to get into that deep, you know, on a deeper level, but that should effectively work now as a 4-band sort of split, you know. So now that we've got these bands set up, the low sub band I'm going to leave sort of untreated, apart from a bit of stereo widening. Like I like that kind of effect on this band. So there's a preset that I actually have been going to with the single tap delay, the delay one. So there's some good presets built in with Bitwig Studio. So this fighter jet preset is a good preset for getting stereo width, and you probably just need to tweak some of these macros in order to get that suited. Like turn up that spread amount, obviously. Keep the mix level all the way up. You can tweak the high and low filters to your likings. The distortion we can bring down, and the wobbly kind of flanging effect we want to sort of remove as well. So that tends to work quite well for stereo width, or that Haas type effect. So moving on to these other bands, we're going to start using the trance gates on these three extra bands. So there's a good preset inside Bitwig once again with the effects grid device. So we'll drop one of those in here and open up this trance gate preset, which is a good starting point. Trance gate and filter trigger. Now, you probably notice I've got like 3 instances of each preset here, which some sort of bung installation thing I've managed at some point, so I haven't quite managed to fix that, but never mind. We've got this trance gate preset, which is a really good starting point for this effect. Okay, so I'll just zoom out somewhat. This is a little bit more spread out than I like my patches, but I guess it's nice and clear to decipher. So we need to tweak this preset in order to get the Euclidean patterns, and there's another really good YouTube video I found to employ this idea. So there's a few things that we need to tweak which are sort of relevant to this gate sequencer around this area. So this transport device, we're going to change the length back to 1 bar, and we're going to bring this back down to 16 steps, like so, and we're going to fill all the steps in effectively. So now, to create the Euclidean patterns, we need to bring in a clock quantizer firstly, and we feed the gate sequencer here into the bottom input, and we want to have this output set to triggers. So we'll just toggle that G back over to a T, and then we want to bring in the triggers module here, which is a basically just like a trigger generator. It just generates triggers, and the number of triggers can be defined by this N at the bottom. And that corresponds to the number of triggers per bar, I believe. And it's got this pre-phase option set, so you can sort of adjust that if you want to change that to run with this transport module. And so I just leave it and just use the actual host transport, and we just route that into the top input of the clock quantizer, and then take that output from the clock quantizer back into these slew generators here. And that effectively is the just the minor tweaks we need to make to create these Euclidean rhythms. So now we can control the number of gates per bar with this triggers module here. And what I've been doing is mapping this to create a preset page here, and yeah, just mapping that to a macro here like that. We'll rename that to band 2 and the gates. So that's effectively that. And there's also a couple of nice sort of built-in sort of effects with this preset that are already there, notably the panning and some filtering as well, which can be quite fun to explore. So moving on to this second band, we can basically just copy this whole device now. If we copy that and paste that in here. Well, it didn't seem to work, did it? Copy. Come on, should be able to copy paste. No. It's no good at all. Anyway, we'll just build that up again. The effects grid, take that preset. This might be a little tedious doing this over and over again, but effectively we want to just make the same tweaks here. Take that back to 1 bar and bring that back to 16. Bring the triggers in and then bring in the clock quantizer. So it goes in there, back to triggers, put it there, and we're going to map that band 3 gates. So effectively these macros go push the number of gates up to 64, but I haven't actually found a way, I don't know if someone can shed some light on this, but how to reduce the range of this sort of macro control. I've not quite figured that out. There's probably a way to do it, I just haven't spent the time trying to work it out. But you probably want to keep these values to 16 and under. So I actually haven't tried pushing that higher, but effectively that's what you'll get the most sort of useful. It'll be the most useful range, so to speak. Okay, so we'll just leave that now and do this lastly on this final band. So set this up again. Open this one up. Actually, I don't think I filled the gates in on the third band there before, which I'll come back to, but clock quantizer. And we'll set up this final band for macro band 4. So that should effectively be so you can hear a few different sort of gate patterns overlaid with one another there, but we're gonna just explore this. Just fix this up because I sort of skipped over this. Okay, so that should be all good now, and we can just tweak some of these step values for different patterns. And 9, 7. So let's have a listen to that. Yeah, it's a pretty interesting kind of filtering effect when you release the keys on this patch with this actual Trance gate preset. So got no gates on that super low band, which is good. I'm going to bring a little bit of the dry signal back in on each band. Sort of give it about 3/4 or so. Like that. I think, yeah, that's all good. You can hear a bit of panning going on with each of those bands, which is good. I'm going to actually take the third band. I'm going to remove the panning on that one, just so keeps it a little bit more stable, I guess. So there's some panning, but not. It's not entirely shifting around. And we'll set the transport in motion and see if that. So you can hear that's starting to sound pretty good now. There's just basically a number of things I'll do to finish this off. So we're just going to add a couple of sort of simple effects to the overall chain, which will be delay. Obviously, we'll just go for the delay one once again. And the straight up sort of number three, I think it's in dotted eights, and you know, moderately high amount of feedback. And I'll just bring that mix balance down a tad. And lastly, we'll just add some reverb. So I'm going to drop in another effects grid device because it has some very nice reverb presets some good folks have made. So yeah, quite a lot of reverb presets in this effects grid, which is worth checking out. So I'm going to go with, there's a nice plate preset in this actually, plate reverb. So now we've pretty much got the sound pretty much there now. So the last couple of things I'll do is map the delay mix and reverb mix parameters to their own macros for easy access. So delay mix, just specify that, delay mix, and finally the reverb mix. Third mix. And there you have it. That's basically the preset in a nutshell. Can save that. I've already built this and saved it, so I'm not going to bother. But there you have it. That's how you can approach making really interesting trance gates, and there's enough scope there to experiment with. You know, the different Euclidean patterns. Obviously, the panning and filtering and so on with each band, and the different effects. You can, you know, take this, push it further with other effects, obviously, and so on. It's lots of fun to experiment with. So yeah, I'm going to wrap this up. I welcome any comments, questions, or you know, other ideas and so on. yeah, I hope you've enjoyed it, and I'll see you in another video soon. See ya.